This is it. This is the culmination of 10 years of Apple's iPhones. This is the iPhone X. Released back in 2017, the iPhone X was a futuristic phone, at least compared to the current iPhone lineup. With a distinct lack of bezels and a missing circular home button, this phone was released as the future of iPhone design, and 7 years later, it still rings true. Released with a truly edge-to-edge display, the OLED screen has vibrant colors, inky blacks, and a remarkable rounded display, a far cry from the previous 16:9 LCD screens we were used to seeing for years on the older iPhones. Blacks were blacker, colors were more colorful, and the iPhones felt new again. And for the first time in years, people were actually lining up again to wait in lines just to go get the newest iPhone.
Hundreds of people seem to be lined up there just wrapping around the block.
Featuring a refined design with rounded stainless steel edges and a sandwich of glass, you could feel the inspiration of the first iPhone all the way up to the iPhone 7. This was Steve Jobs' dream iPhone, a perfect slab of glass with a gorgeous edge-to-edge display. And for the first time since the iPhone 5S, a new way to enter into your phone. With the creation of Face ID with depth sensing cameras, in real time you could see Apple reshaping the phone industry. Again, for years Apple pushed boundaries, then after Steve Jobs passed away, they took a back seat and played it safe. But in 2017, they laid all their cards on the table to enter a new era in Apple. Not an era defined by the past, but a new era pushing forward to the future. A new era. But for the first time, this new era was not created by Steve Jobs. This era would be defined by Tim Cook. And what better phone to do that with than the iPhone X, Apple's anointing event, anointing a new leader in Tim Cook. This is a refinement over years and years and years. This is the iPhone X. This is the end of the Steve Jobs era. This is the beginning of the Tim Cook era. And I have some thoughts about this phone. So I haven't been able to use it for more than just a day or two at this point. But what I've noticed is that this phone is still remarkably capable in 2024. It's crazy how well Apple designs their phones. Obviously controlling everything from the front end to the back end really makes a huge difference. But at the end of the day, like old Android phones that are 6 or 7 years old don't feel as good. Like swiping around the operating system, it's like this phone is brand new. It feels less laggy than my iPhone 12 mini sometimes. Obviously the 12 mini has a bad battery, but this battery is sitting at 85%. So this phone is awesome still. It's still so good. It's so frustrating that Apple doesn't support it anymore. But they do sometimes send it security patches. Obviously it's running iOS 16. It's hard to believe that this phone is a budget phone at this point. It's a $100 phone, $115 phone. When it came out, it was $1,000. It was just like the biggest step forward for Apple in terms of pricing, in terms of look, in terms of design. They said this is the future of the iPhone, and ever since then, every single smartphone that they've released has completely mimicked this design language, other than squaring off the corners, which sucks because the rounded corners feel way better in the hand. Apple should definitely go back to that. I'm sure they will. The way that the things just sort of cycle is they started with sort of rounded corners, then they went to square it off, then they went to round it, then they went to square it off. So obviously, eventually they go back to round it, and then everybody else will sort of copy them, because that's just sort of how it goes. My first day of actually using the phone, the thing I've noticed is that the cameras are solid still. They definitely still hold up pretty well. The Face ID is a little bit sluggish. I can just feel it. It's not quite as snappy as more modern iPhones that I've used, like the iPhone 12 mini or the 13 Pro that I used to use. Those were like instant. This one is, you gotta make sure you're looking at it at the perfect angle. You can't just like sort of hold it off to the side like the newer phones you can. You have to very much be staring right at it. It has to be looking right at your face. But it's still, obviously, it still works really well. This phone is so remarkable because this is really 10 years of refinement all into one. You could literally feel the impact all the way from the first iPhone until now in this phone. And it's pretty incredible holding it in my hand because this is the phone that I always wanted. This phone came out in 2017 and I started this tech channel in 2018, which is crazy to think that I've been doing for 6 years on and off, but 6 years nonetheless. And the thing that I've noticed the most with this phone is that this is the first phone that I've tested out that's no longer supported by iOS updates. That feels like it should still be supported. Because using this phone, it feels just as good as my wife's phone, just as good as my current phone. Everything feels just as quick. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that this has 256 gigabytes of storage, which is something to note if you're buying an older used phone. You can get a ton of storage for super cheap, $111 for this phone, 256 gigabytes of storage, and the battery is at 85%. So this phone still to this day is still rocking it, still killing it. But the unfortunate thing is with all of these older iPhones that I'm testing out is that they aren't supported by security updates. I pulled it out of the package and the first thing I had to do was update it to the latest iOS because of a security reason. So you know that Apple is going to support the most recent iOS for probably 2 years after it's been discontinued. So this phone will probably receive updates up until 2025 security wise, but there's no guarantee. Apple doesn't guarantee anything like that. But from my experience, from the things that I've read, you could could probably basically guarantee 2 years. You probably feel a little bit more comfortable with using banking on this phone because nobody's gonna be able to send you a text message that completely breaks it, or you know how that happens sometimes with Apples where they send you a text message and basically what happens is it completely ruins your phone. Yeah, so it's probably not gonna happen on this phone for at least a little bit, but it's something definitely to always be concerned of and aware about. But what I think with these older phones that's so interesting to me and so intriguing to me is, obviously on this channel, I want people to spend less time on technology. I'm shouting into the void. Nobody seems to be listening. The videos just get more and more views every day. But hopefully I'm changing some hearts and changing some minds because I want you to use your phone a lot less. And this phone, the unfortunate thing with this phone is that I think that this is not going to help anybody use their phone any less than they're currently using it. This phone feels as modern and as good as a modern iPhone. And so when using this phone, you're not going to get that same feel of the iPhone 12 mini, in my opinion, or any of the SEs. You're not gonna get that same feel of, oh man, I definitely don't wanna pull this phone out because this phone is unbelievably attractive. It feels so great in the hand. The screen still is really good. And I think that a lot of people are gonna have a really hard time spending less time on their phone than with this phone because it's just designed so well. I'm going to be using this phone for the next week and probably a little bit longer depending on how much I like it. And I'll let you know my final thoughts on it in a couple of videos from now. So subscribe for that one, like this video if you like it, share with somebody who you bought your first iPhone 10 with, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.